Alright guys, I decided, been spending some time on the door in the door jamb area. We've gotten this all cleaned up. This week I decided I wanted to start the trunk kit installation. So I pulled out my handy dandy notebook and my pen and started taking measurements in the trunk area, making notes, and I discovered something a bit concerning. Okay guys, so in beginning or prepping for this new trunk floor kit installation, the first thing I did was make a diagram and start taking a lot of measurements just so I can get things back in place, or at least ballpark, so I can make sure nothing's off majorly. But as I was digging around and taking measurements in here, I realized that this entire wheel well, if you look, is actually shifted this way. And I had previously assumed that there was an impact on this side, given the fact that they replaced the quarter panel and this looked like there's some bending in here. But I didn't really investigate much further. So I decided to look a little further, and I look up here and I notice that this wheel well has dented in and bent the bracing up here. If you look at the passenger side, everything here is very nice and straight. All the metal is nice and straight in here, coming down here, nice and straight. You come over to this side. First of all, there's actually two wheel wells here. You can see that this is definitely shifted over. There's an outer wheel well with another outer wheel well underneath it. And you come over and start looking at all this metal, and look at how dented it is up there, down along here, and look at how twisted it is down here. This is actually twisted. The first thing I did naturally was freak out a little bit, because I was like, oh, this impact was a little worse than I thought. And my biggest concern was the frame rails on this side. So I got a diagram of what my frame measurements should be, and I did the necessary measurements on this side. And the frame, it's a little bit difficult to measure it, to get the tape measure, on correctly, but it is about where it should be. It's almost dead on. So I don't think the frame rail has been bent in any way. With the frame rails being square and straight, the car should drive straight. But this did get me looking at something else, which is this. I've known since day one with this car that the trunk lid does not close evenly. I mean, you can see there, much higher on this side, much lower on this side. Where does this side attach? The bracing comes down onto this wheel well. How the bracing looks on the passenger side that has not been impacted, looks pretty good. Everything looks pretty straight. You come over here and things are a little wacky. This has me wondering, does this trunk floor kit install, is it going to have to include me pulling off the quarter panel on this side and the wheel wells and doing this installation? No, what? You stop being so cute. So now I'm wondering, in order to install this trunk floor properly, am I going to also have to remove the quarter panel and wheel well on this side, and before I do much welding, get everything clamped in place, tacked in place, screwed in place, and make sure everything is going to align, and then start welding? So I'm contemplating, did the trunk floor install just become a much bigger job? I'm not sure yet. I hopped in here and measured on these sides from this corner down to the floor pan. From this corner right here of the brace down to the floor pan, and from this corner down to the floor pan, and then came over here and did it the same on this side. This side has not been impacted. This side here definitely sits lower, and that would be because this wheel well is shifted, which would bring this brace down. You can see on the side that hasn't been impacted, that's about 5.5 inches from that corner down. I can measure it a little bit more accurately when I'm not holding my phone, but that is about 5.5 inches. Come over to this side, the side that's been impacted, and it is just barely 5 inches. So, oops, this side is definitely sitting well, which is due to the fact that the wheel well, I believe, is shifted this way, which is lowering this brace. That's fun stuff. Really fun stuff. But the car, again, but the frame rails again are straight. So the car should run straight. This is all cosmetic stuff, I guess you could say. So I think the plan has changed. Here's what I think the plan is going to have to be for my best bet getting this back to where it should be. Assuming that the car is symmetrical from this way to this way, and I say assuming because you do find little things like this trunk floor pan is actually not symmetrical to this one. This one juts out, but I think that actually has to do with stuff going on underneath the car. I am assuming that the inner bracing section to the wheel wells should be symmetrical. So that being said, and if that is the case, I can get all of my measurements for what's proper over here. And I can make changes and bend this stuff back as long as all this is intact and I can measure off of it. This, everything over here, for the time being, is going to stay intact as reference. The first thing I'm going to take out is this floor pan section here, leaving as much of this structure intact as I can. This will come out. I'm going to have to take at least section out part of the quarter panel for now, but most of this is going to get replaced. And that wheel well needs to come out. By doing that, I can start piecing this side back together. I can start bending that metal back to where it needs to be by taking measurements from center over to this stuff. And hopefully I can get this pan and a new wheel well back in place. And that's another challenge because the reviews I've read on the aftermarket wheel wells, they do not fit quite properly. So they need some modifications in order to fit properly. So I have to keep that in mind. But anyway, try to get this pan and this wheel well installed correctly by going off of measurements on this side, and hopefully that will get us well on our way to straightening everything up. So the plan has changed yet again, but I don't see any other way around this if I want to get that side of the car straightened out. I don't see any other way to do it. I have to keep taking things apart, and as much as I don't want to do that, I think that's just going to be the nature of the beast with this car. Which, it could be way worse. This car is in pretty good condition. And since the car runs straight, the frame is straight, worst case scenario, I get this thing apart, I start getting it back together and things don't quite line up. They're not straight, but I can still drive the thing. And I'll just have to wear my work like a badge of honor. Because at least I'm learning while trying to do it. So I'm going to think this over some more. We'll be back tomorrow night. And I don't know what we're going to be doing tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we might have all the measurements we need, and we might be ripping off that quarter panel. I don't know. So here's the extent of the damage. We knew that the driver door and the driver quarter panel were off of a 66 Mustang because the colors match and it's a 66 emblem. I think that's the most likely scenario. When you open this up, the B pillar has also been replaced. And when you come around to look at the damage, and I might have already shown you this, but here is the original wheelhouse, and there's a new wheelhouse underneath it. So I don't know if the wheelhouse, all this damage was just left, but on impact it looks like this bracket, all of this got crunched and bent up in here. Now, again, I have measured the frame several times from several measurements off of spec sheets, and the frame is square, at least according to all the measurements that I have. So I'm wondering if maybe it was a truck or something higher up that hit the car. I'm not sure, but that's a big sigh of relief, at least for now. Now thankfully, it appears as though this quarter was put on, overlapped quite a bit up through the sail panel section, which I am happy about, because I plan on just drilling out these spot welds, popping this thing off, and hopefully there's plenty of material to work with in through here for me to put the new quarter on, because I don't want to mess with having to go up and under here. Or I feel like welding in this corner will be tough. Maybe it'll actually be easier and you'd be better off just going with filler there. I don't know. But if this B-pillar is in good condition, I'll reuse this and we'll have to do a full quarter repair. This is going to be a big job. This is straight out of a Joe Daddy playbook for sure. And I was hoping to get maybe a floor pan welded in or do some patch panels on fenders before I started doing any major projects like this, or do the trunk. But we know that the trunk led into this. But honestly, I mean, my motivation is leaning toward this project. That's where I want to gravitate to. I want to start pulling off those quarter panels and finding out what's going on in there. So once I get this door hung, that's the direction I'm going to go. Another reason for gravitating over to this project and doing that, all of that, is I really want to get the rear end, which is covered up under these sheets. I really want to get the rear end, which is covered up under these sheets, back on the car. But I don't want to put that in until I have the new trunk pans installed and I get in here and paint underneath the car so that I can get all of that taken care of before so I can do all that while the rear end is outside of the car. Not having the rear end on the car now presents a bit of a challenge, because before I start the trunk wheelhouse quarter panel project, I want to get the car shifted over more toward the center of the garage and leveled off as best I can. It's going to be tough to move, but I have some ideas on how I'm going to do that. We'll see if it works or not. So this coming week is hopefully going to be getting the door hung and the car moved over and prepped for dismantling the back end driver's side of the car, so that we can get in there and find out what the heck is going on. And I'm pretty excited about it. I'm still like, this is definitely a domino effect. I've definitely been doing more dismantling and taking apart than I have been progressing and putting things back together and stuff, but we'll get there. Oh, and one other thing I should probably mention is I was hanging out on the Joe Daddy Live Monday nights chat, and Jorge was on there, and he had mentioned that there's a good chance a lot of things made in China are going to be going up in price due to the whole COVID thing and this and that. So I took his advice and went and ordered a bunch of sheet metal today that I'm going to need to fix the car. So the $125 a month budget for this thing has kind of gone out the window, but you know, the wife and I talked about it and stuff, and you know, fortunately sheet metal for these Mustangs is still decently priced, and I live an hour away from CJ Painting Parts, so I don't have to pay the ridiculous freight shipping. I can drive down in my truck and pick up all that stuff. So today I ordered the 2 quarter panels, the full wheelhouse on the driver's side, the outer wheelhouse on the passenger side, and a new gas tank, and a few other U-bolts. All new U-bolts to get the back end installed back in. And all of that came to like just over $500. So, I mean, that's a decent amount of money, but holy cow. Like, I'm trying to remember what I paid for a quarter panel for my Buick Skylark when I was a kid. But it was just 1 quarter panel alone, I think, was at least half that. I don't know. Anywho, not a whole lot done this week. Spent a lot of time just studying this, looking at it, trying to develop a plan. That's where I'm at. So I figured, you know what? Let's throw up another video this week, update you guys, let you know I'm still working on this, but a lot of plan developing is going on. So hopefully I have more action to show you next week. So until the next episode, guys, take care.